Let me get a picture of that.
So be forewarned. That we have a brutal reputation.
Thank you so much.
Screwed up. I want to.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Very efficient. Everybody's very efficient. Michael, I hope that worked out for you. Good. Thank you so much. Nice job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging us on the interlude. And I think that your spontaneous standing ovation was a recognition of the affection in which you hold Kent, as well as the respect you have for what she's done for 25 years. We're about to move on to the rest of the program. I want to remind you that the legislative panel will be the conclusion of the day. So we've invited a cross-section of legislators to join us to react to the things you've heard during the day. But we're moving on to the next group of speakers, which will be led off by the president of the State University of New Jersey, Richard McCormick. Richard? Your choice. You can have this, or
I'll use that.
okay, great.
I'll use that. Okay. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak, and congratulations to Leadership New Jersey for the exceptional work this organization does in inspiring leaders from across the state to address New Jersey's most important challenges. But I must admit, I was taken aback by the premise of today's conversation that New Jersey's problems are so great that we should just start over from scratch. Now, would that we could do that in some areas, but what a waste of our progress it would be in so many others. No doubt we have our share of serious challenges, fiscal, environmental, urban, and political among them, but we're also blessed with so many advantages in New Jersey: a highly educated workforce, remarkable diversity, a proud heritage of scientific discovery, our proximity to New York and Philadelphia, abundant natural resources including treasures like the highlands, pinelands, and the shore, our colonial roots and our cultural riches, a wide array of public and private colleges and universities, progressive state government, and a cadre of leaders like you. That's a whole lot of positives that I would never want to give up. Just imagine how much we could achieve by using all of our advantages to address the most important human challenges of the 21st century. Let me give you 3 examples. First, climate change and the quest for alternative sources of energy. New Jersey has the science and engineering expertise in our universities and research labs to develop truly revolutionary solutions. They are studying not only how to prevent global warming from becoming worse, but also how to adapt to the changes that are already coming. New Jersey also has the most ambitious law in the nation and a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% before 2050. We have all of the incentive in the world to find these answers with a vulnerable shoreline and many disadvantaged communities in low-lying regions. In that sense, we have as much at stake as a country like Bangladesh. Another example is never far from our minds in New Jersey: transportation. The Garden State has a remarkable network of roads, rails, ports, and airports, all of which draw some of the heaviest traffic in the nation. Much of this infrastructure is well past due for replacement. The Pulaski Skyway, built with the same design as the ill-fated bridge in Minneapolis, is just one example. We have expertise in industry and academia to develop new solutions. Just this past spring, in fact, a consortium led by Rutgers won a federal grant to study the performance of bridges nationwide. The solutions found right here in New Jersey will lead to safer, sturdier infrastructure around the world. A third example is nutrition. Thankfully, we in New Jersey do not face the scourge of famine as do some developing nations. But our communities are dealing with an epidemic of childhood and adult obesity and all the health effects that come with it, including diabetes and heart disease. Just as in developed nations around the world, many people in our state are overfed and undernourished, and they are headed for unhealthy and shorter lives because of it. The implications of obesity extend beyond health care to social development, economic success, and public policy. We have the knowledge to address these problems, to address these impacts, and prevent these problems. New Jersey has one of the nation's most sophisticated health care networks, including pharmaceutical companies, research experts within our universities, and a major health care foundation that has made obesity a focus of its grant-making and a commitment from Trenton to help. Even without the astonishing financial events of the past few weeks, we have seen and felt the effects of difficult physical times on our state. But that does not mean we are any less capable of leadership on issues of substance and importance. Take the field of public higher education. When most of you were in college, state funding contributed about 2/3 of the cost of a student at a public institution like Rutgers. Now the state contribution is just above 40% and steadily decreasing. That is a mighty challenge for our students and for our colleges, but it does not exempt us from our role in building the New Jersey economy and addressing the state's most difficult problems. Now, like so many institutions, Rutgers has to find new sources of revenue, such as private grants, foundation support, and federal grants. We're also building revenue-generating academic programs geared to the emerging needs of students whom we do not currently teach. This includes continuing education, certificate and degree completion programs, online degrees, and lifelong learning programs. Even as we confront difficult funding realities, we're also discovering new opportunities to serve the citizens of our state and contribute to its health and strength. So if you want to cast New Jersey in gloom and doom, you can probably gather enough evidence to prove your point. But that's not an accurate picture. New Jersey has one of the highest standards of living in the nation and the world. We have some of the world's most talented business leaders, most visionary philanthropists, most dedicated public servants, most gifted artists, and most spectacular scenery. We have a slogan at Rutgers: Jersey Roots, Global Reach. It really applies to all we do in New Jersey to find innovative solutions to human problems. Our answers can change the world. Thank you for this opportunity this afternoon.
All right, we're moving along. The next speaker in this segment. Are you all okay? Are you suffering from postprandial letdown or anything? Do we have to bring sugar to all your tables? All right, the next speaker is Rich Miller, who's the president of Virtua Health System.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My comments will be geared toward healthcare, obviously. I'm in healthcare. We'll talk a little bit about healthcare, something you probably won't hear a lot about on the debate tonight, but it is an important issue. Healthcare is in trouble in the state of New Jersey. 50% of the hospitals in this state are losing money from operations. The picture around the rest of the nation is quite different. Hospitals are healthy. If you compare the Philadelphia marketplace over whom Virtua Health competes with, hospitals are seeing double-digit operating margins. So the issue in New Jersey is, we have to start dealing with the issue of health care reform in this state, and we have to do it soon. And all I hear is we don't have enough money to do it, but we're going to have to consider that. Charity care, Medicaid, don't work anymore. Hospitals are significantly underfunded. Medicaid is significantly underfunded for not only hospitals, but for primary care physicians in the state of New Jersey who won't see Medicaid patients anymore because they can't afford to. So we're really having problems not only with reimbursement, but with access to care. And the overall problem we're facing in New Jersey is not the issue of only access, but the issue of hospitals and providers being able to compete, because it's going to take significant dollars in the future in healthcare for IT, information technology expansion, and diagnostic technology expansion, which is multi-million-dollar expansion in many quarters around the country. Will New Jersey have the access to that capital, or will the hospitals in New Jersey have access to that capital? And that's the key question. The governor just had a commission on health care, famously called the Reinhardt Commission in New Jersey, which spoke about a shortfall in reimbursement. We haven't made much progress on that. So here's what I think, Rich Miller thinks we need to look for in New Jersey. We need to align the incentives between hospitals and physicians in New Jersey. Can't be different incentives for doctors and for hospitals. They have to be aligned in order to provide better patient care. We need more dollars in the areas of preventative and wellness care. More dollars have to flow in that direction. The incentives for health care are inverted. They're towards sick care. We have to think about how we're going to take care of ourselves, and wellness and prevention, more dollars need to be spent there, and that means more dollars in primary care as well. We need consumers to take more responsibility for their health. Okay, what we're seeing in pediatric obesity today is staggering. You know, our kids are overweight. We need to be thinking about how we promote our own health, and there should be incentives in any health care reform plan that speak to that. And we need to make people like me in hospitals and people in physician offices responsible for transparency as well. We need to tell the public if we're safe and if we're providing quality of care, and we need to be paid on that premise, like all other industry is paid on quality and safety. Our health care providers need to be paid there as well. And I think if we develop a system and sit down and think about that system of how we can best do that with our legislative body and stop the fiasco every year of underfunding charity care and Medicaid, I think we'll be better served. Right now, the governor has $41 million for stabilization of hospitals in New Jersey. The question is, next year there might be another $40 million. Next year after that, there might be another $40 million. There needs to be a plan to stop the bleeding, and the only way we're going to get there is through a sensible health care reform plan that ensures all New Jerseyans.
Stay here.
Okay. I'm okay.
All right, we'll try to be very quick about this. I'm not sure how to phrase something that would align incentives for doctors and hospitals, so I'm going to pass on that. But the idea that we need to flip the spending from sick care to prevention and wellness care, so I think that's apple pie, but let's try it. 5-1. All in favor? Vote. Survey says. We put an extra I in your name, Rich. How did we do that?
That's okay.
You bought a vowel, obviously.
Bought a vowel,
yes. All right. All right, so we're in favor of that. Consumer responsibility for the kinds of health care decisions they make. I think that's also apple pie, but let's just see if you want to, how strongly you feel about that. 5-1, vote. And the survey says? Okay, we're really behind that. And finally, paying people like Rich on that transparent basis so that if they produce in terms of quality and safety, that they will be paid accordingly. But if they don't, they won't. You're voting. Survey says. All right, we're with you. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Next person on our list is from the New Jersey Builders Association, Tim Toohey.
Thank you. Before I start, obviously, I do, Dr. McCormick, want to acknowledge the talent and the richest of New Jersey. I mean, clearly everyone in here that I've come across only cares about this state and wants to bring it forward. But I'll try to go through this pretty quickly of 4 points as it relates to if I had my wish and the challenges of New Jersey. Number one would be home rule versus regionalization. I think from the perspective of the state, we're going to have to get to an understanding and a model to compete both in the marketplace, in land use, in investment and strategy, we're going to have to wrap our arms around regionalization in New Jersey. And just because how business decisions are made quickly, how public school decisions can be made in a more broader sense, how we may be able to save investment and predictability, I think we need to get our arms around this. Number two, I think New Jersey needs a regulatory analysis. I think if you look historically at public sector reaction to private sector advancement or if you will, crisis, is obviously through a regulatory scope, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that. But I think clearly in New Jersey there's a misconnect with every state agency that we have, every authority that we have, on how to create some level of predictability in decision-making that the private sector can react to as it relates to overall goals and policies. So I would label that as my number two. I think three, we have to move well beyond our rhetoric of where we want to grow and not grow in New Jersey. It's been the historical battle for years of how we're going to grow, particularly in my industry, residential development, whether it's for sale or multifamily, where commercial and retail may go, and how to preserve open space. I think we need to finally come to closure, match it with investment, match it with regulatory description, match it with incentives. New Jersey cannot survive alone anymore. We live in an international and national world. We have to be able to market ourselves in that way. We'll have to communicate in that way. And clearly the continued wrestling match around this issue has, I think, been created a serious disconnect. Number four, I think we clearly need a reform of our property tax structure and our pension systems and how we pay for it. I truly believe that if I told you a year ago that we would lose 7 of the major financial institutions in America based on a financial model that no longer works, you probably would have said that'll never happen. We are facing a system, I think, currently in New Jersey and how we pay to play, pay to go, pay to serve, pay to invest, that may need to be needs to be evaluated. So a reform of our property tax structure and our pension structure. And then clearly I think we need an economic model that will look at green investment as a growth opportunity, transportation as an opportunity, look at workforce housing as a way of servicing the competitive workforce going forward. So those are my 5 principles. Thank you.
All right, I say this respectfully. I think that we have probably covered some aspect of all those in previous votes. So in the interest of staying on time and moving along, I'm going to ask that we go right to Phil Kirshner from NJBIA.
Thanks. I'm very honored to be here, and I think this is really a fun format to sort of, if I ruled the world, or at least New Jersey, what would we do? And from my perspective, particularly as we try to go about creating jobs and being very competitive, it was good to have Dr. McCormick here, because I think it's about education and higher education. You have the best business plan in the world. If you don't have the right people to implement it and to execute it, you don't have much of business. And to that end, if I had my druthers, we would have more state colleges that have more seats in them for New Jersey students. We're like the first or second in the country and spend an inordinate amount of money on K through 12 education, have some of the finest schools in the country, only to export the largest percentage of any state to other states. That doesn't make any sense. Allied to that, I would also have a scholarship program, expand a little bit on what there is now, that any student that has, let's say, a 3.4 or 3.5 average in high school will get anywhere from a 2/3 to 3/4 scholarship if they attend a New Jersey college or university and maintain at least a 3.4 while they're in college. Allied to that, whether it's through our community colleges or through our high schools, we need a stronger commitment also to vocational education. We want to develop a green workforce. We need people to install things, to fix things. We always will. And we should, number one, invest in that. And number two, somehow there's been a stigma attached to those type of jobs. And that's wrong. They are every bit as necessary and every bit as valuable as white-collar jobs or any other kinds of jobs you would think. And last but not least, we need to market our state better. I think Dr. McCormick mentioned we have a lot of advantages here in New Jersey. That's why a lot of us are here. Very few people, whether they're within New Jersey or outside, know that because the state spends very, very little money to market its own virtues, and we really should do a better job of doing that. So in my short time, that's the kinds of things I would recommend. Thank you.
All those well-educated kids. So the first thing, are you in favor of more state colleges, but specifically more seats for New Jersey students? All right. So you're going to vote. You're voting. Survey says you are. Okay. Next, a scholarship program. You know about New Jersey Stars. You know about Stars 2. You know about who funds it or doesn't fund it, but would you be in favor of a scholarship program where at some level, 3.4, 3.5, that there would be scholarships available for kids, 2/3, 3/4, whatever it is. The specifics are not critical to the concept. So a scholarship program rewarding kids achieving at that level in high school if they go to a New Jersey college. So we'll call it Stars 3. All right? You're voting. Survey says that we're going to dance. 68%. Okay. Next, green-collar jobs. By looking at the opportunities available within the vocational education structure that we have, a green or greener workforce. I'm going to guess that's apple pie motherhood that way, but we'll see how you care in terms of across the board. 5-1, you're voting. Survey says, wow. Okay, a big winner, Phil. And finally, increase the funding that the state injects into telling its own story. Market New Jersey better. You're voting. 5-1. You're done voting. Survey says. Okay, a little bit more dispersed. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
All right. The next speaker is from the Gloucester County Times. He's the editor. His name is John Barna. John. Remember, everybody's biography is in that glob of biographies. Read all about them while they're talking to you.
Ironically, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Kirshner had said about marketing New Jersey a little better. Saturday afternoon, traffic at one intersection in Medford Township resembled the New Jersey Turnpike southbound on a summer weekend where we go from 6 lanes to 3. It took motorists, including me, 10 traffic cycles to get through Hartford Road across Route 70 and blame a bunch of pumpkin pickers, apple lovers, and soccer moms. There were some 2,000 people at Johnson's Farm, several hundred at an apple festival, and a similar number at Lenape High School, where the Mount Laurel United Soccer Club had organized the Columbus Day Soccer Tournament. My 9-year-old, fresh off a morning baseball game, was among those who spent 4 hours in the pumpkin patch. Mom wasn't too happy. Seeking the perfect one to take home, going through a hayride, and then an assortment of attractions where we could climb, run, and jump. While development of industrial parks, expansion of mass transit systems, and rejuvenation of abandoned industrial sites along the waterfront into bustling ports are highly visible ways we could provide additional jobs and new tax rateables in New Jersey. Sometimes it's worth a look at the simple things that offer more than a quality of life aspect in New Jersey. We're still called the Garden State. Ignoring the snickers from those who quickly note that we're also the nation's most densely populated state, there are still ample tracts where agriculture is vibrant and its benefits evident. Friends who visit from outside the region during the summer insist on stopping at a local farm stand to stock up on corn and tomatoes, even though those commodities are readily available at stands in their home state. There's something about the taste of veneer Jersey corn that the same product from another state just cannot match. Ditto for peaches, tomatoes, and others. Farmland preservation and agritourism are buzzwords uttered by many a political figure, and it would be worth our while to put a little bit of urgency into the rhetoric. In piecing together the current state budget, agricultural promotion, along with a reduction in closure of our state parks and historic sites, became a target in the Corzine budget. A restoration of funds, $4 million by one account, had maintained the status quo. Well, what would happen if we took an additional $4 million to promote the treasures of New Jersey? In the midst of an economic downturn, some would call this a depression, what would it take New Jersey to become more aggressive in funding acquisition of farmland for preservation on a permanent basis? Economists will suggest it will take 2 years, if not more, to restore the housing market. Why not buy land now at depressed prices? Candidly, we speed up the process, we preserve additional tracts, and at the same time, remaining parcels suddenly become much more valuable. Rateable growth is achieved while we expand our open space. What would it take to promote such oddities as a 6-story tin elephant along the beach in New Jersey and Margate? How about the availability of a dozen lighthouses to climb and explore? Try that in Massachusetts. How about a museum where the light bulb was developed? The battle site along the Delaware River, where a skirmish sent the Hessians fleeing and convinced many in France that, hey, we could win a war. How about the tiny harbor in Cumberland County, where we burn tea, yet the Bostonians get all the credit for it? Heck, George Washington spent more days in Princeton than he did at Valley Forge, yet because he spent it in August, he doesn't get the credibility that spending the winter in Valley Forge does. Candidly, these ideas are not very visible on the radar screen of those who run our state and seek its elected positions. Saying you're going to push for more visitors to the Twin Lights in Navesink or the Tinningham Lighthouse are not going to win many votes. But it makes New Jersey a more attractive place to win, to live, work, and play. Adds a little bit of pride. And heck, isn't that why we're here? 7.5 million of us call this place home. Why not enjoy it a little better? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Stay here. All right. First thing, more money to promote tourism, which is like stealing John Sider's thunder. He's going to talk later. 5-1, all right? 5, you're for it. 1, it's not a priority for you. You're voting. Survey says. Okay, that's a dispersed, but second, spending more money basically on supporting the agricultural community infrastructure. That's probably not the way John phrased it, but I think that's fair. So we haven't talked about that today. 5-1, you're voting. Survey says. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay. Farmland preservation. Let's buy now at depressed prices. It will help to raise the prices of the things that we don't buy, and we will be getting a bargain. All right? 5-1. You're voting. Survey says. That's pretty dispersed, too. That's very interesting. And finally, let's carve out agritourism from the tourism question that we started with, and putting more money into agricultural tourism or agritourism in New Jersey. This is 5-1. 1, you don't really care. 5, cool idea. You're voting. Survey says. Wow, that's one of our biggest. All right, great. Thank you, John. All right, next speaker on the list is the Executive Director of the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy at Stockton, Sharon Schulman.
Thank you. It sounds like marketing is going to be the theme of the afternoon, and I'm not sure that we all agree. We need to take a look at what we are marketing. We're marketing for special interests right now. We market for the dairy industry. We market for individual tourist sites. Perhaps what we need to be doing is marketing the state as a whole. Let's start doing like we do in Virginia. Virginia is for lovers. We know the Big Apple. And every of the other places can take off that theme and use as they need to do. But as we do these little ones, we're siphoning off dollars and not I didn't mean to pick on just the dairy industry, but we do this a lot. There are, if you look in the state budget, there are millions and millions of dollars where we advertise and we market small sections. Instead, let's do the grand scheme and market New Jersey. Jersey Fresh was an excellent program when we did it. Right today, we also operate by something called Maine's Law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite government program. We have to step back. We have to define what business government is in. We govern today by reaction. We try to be everything to all people, and this is a basic. We need to be able to step back and take a look at what we're doing and see what is necessary to foster New Jersey and what is merely trying to, I hate to say it, but pander and buy votes on some of these things. Another thing we need to do, another basic, we need to change the way our employees work. We need a system that recognizes effort. Today, we have a civil service system and a salary system that says, here's what you're going to get when you're going to get it. How many years, what's going to happen? We have to go to market-based compensation. We have to go to a way to provide incentives, performance incentives, and it has to be formulaic so it's measurable. Efficiency in how we decide wages and salaries, we're going to have to move on to that one also. Statewide contract negotiations for different kinds of people, such as teachers and government employees, with regional salary adjustments to account for the cost of living. And lastly, we need less or better regulation and more monitoring. We need to ensure that regulation is not more regulation is not needed. We need to use independent data and research to make policy decisions. And we have resources in the state to do that. Use our state's educational resources, that is the colleges, as repositories of data and research. Thank you.
All right. Basically, forget the targeting and go for statewide marketing, okay? New Jersey and you, perfect together. All right, you like that idea? 5, you like it down the scale, you're voting. Survey says. Okay. Number 2, we're not going to vote on it. It's an anti-pandering thing. So I'm assuming you're all against pandering unless we're pandering to you, right? So sucking up to you is good, sucking up to anybody else is bad. We can agree on that. Market-based compensation and performance-based incentives for public employees. You like that idea? It's a 5. You don't? Down the scale, you're voting. Survey says. You like it a lot. All right. Statewide negotiation of certain kinds of contracts, e.g. teachers' contracts, as opposed to negotiating those on some limited school district or other basis. You like that idea? It's a 5. You don't? You know the number. You're voting. Survey says. You like that idea pretty much. And finally, we had less regulation, more monitoring, and that's hard to vote on. So we're not going to vote on it. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
All right. Next person on the list is the former executive director of Leadership New Jersey, probably, this is just a matter of my opinion, one of the most thoughtful, interesting people, one of the most well-informed people with respect to all that happens in New Jersey, somebody I never agreed with but love to talk to, and somebody who is synonymous with Leadership New Jersey, Tom O'Neill.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here. I need to tell you that I do question the basic premise of today's meeting, that we can blow things up and start over again. I think it was William Faulkner who said the past is never dead, it's not even past. And one of the great examples of how that is the fact in New Jersey is the predominance of the system set up by the 1947 Constitution. Great new Constitution for the state. Performed a miracle in making state government strong and creating the strongest governorship in the United States. But we've looked back now over 60 years of experience, and the model of a strong centralized executive and a strong legislature has not solved fundamental problems that the state faces that have been described here all day long. and I think it's time for a change. The succession problems created by the early departure from office of Christy Whitman and Jim McGreevey led us to create the first new constitutional office since that Constitution, the office of Lieutenant Governor. I think that opens the door for us to think about the creation of some other offices, elective offices, that could change slightly the balance created by the 1947 Constitution in a way that could make state government more responsive to its underlying problems of fiscal responsibility, of honesty and integrity in government, and in the creation of a new, more visible ladder of leadership development so that there would be more than one single figure elected statewide to state office in the state. We should recognize, I think, that the existence of our extremely powerful governorship requires effective oversight to make sure that those powers are being used in a way that really address the fundamental problems that we confront. That's not been delivered by the legislature. It has failed to deliver the kind of oversight we need. And split control between the legislature and the governor's office between the parties has become a relative rarity, decreasing even further the opportunities for real oversight. Other states around the country show that this observation, while it's maybe unusual in New Jersey, is quite common in other places. We're one of only 7 states in the country that does not elect its attorney general. Most other states elect their Secretary of State. So what I'd like to recommend for your consideration is that we pick out 2 or 3 key offices that perform an oversight function, the kind of function performed by the referee in a sports game, the guy with a striped shirt who can call balls and strikes and fouls, and give those offices the greater legitimacy and authority that they could derive from being elected directly by the people. I do not recommend that we elect the Attorney General. I think the Attorney General is too important to the functioning of the governor's program. As the chief law enforcement and legal advice source in state government, that needs to be a part of the governor's program. But we have recognized with the creation of an independent state comptroller the strength that can come from an independent point of view in finance. I recommend we go even further and make the state comptroller a statewide elective office. I go further a little bit and say that we ought to look very hard at making the Secretary of State the state's chief elections officer, an elective office, to ensure direct responsibility of the public for fair, efficient elections given with good voting machines. And I believe we ought to elect the public advocate statewide in New Jersey to serve the role of a fresh point of view, given attention equal to that of the governor by virtue of that election, so that we can get new ideas into the system and create an ombudsman function that really works. Thank you.
All right, Tom is against it, but we'll let you vote on an elected Attorney General. You like it or you don't? You're voting? Are we voting? Survey says. Okay, you're not in favor, so you won the day, Tom.
A wise group.
All right. Should we have a statewide elected official in the capacity of the state comptroller? Statewide elected comptroller. You're voting. Survey says. You agree with that. An elected Secretary of State to oversee and assure the fairness of the election function. Can we get out of
Open to
okay.
discussion, but you can assume that.
All right, so you're voting. Survey says. Wow. We have some polarization on that puppy. And finally, the public advocate / ombudsman, you are in favor of making that an elected statewide office. You are voting now. Survey says. Okay, there's a little polarization there, but more than half.
Those of you interested in that topic, there'll be a paper on this subject forthcoming, published by New Jersey Policy Perspective, John Shores organization. Look for it in January.
All right. Next speaker, former Transportation Secretary Jim Weinstein.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And timing is everything in this. And now that the Republicans yesterday announced they want a sales tax holiday on this, I'm here to propose that we have a special purpose transportation sales tax at the county level, following the model that has been was initiated and is used wisely in California and has been remarkably successful. If you know the history of the anti-tax movement in this country, it started with Prop 13. Basically, that Prop 13 reactions forced the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, to basically abrogate their responsibilities, frankly, because they didn't have the money. The counties in California, at the same time, California continued to grow. Its economy continued to put incredible pressure on the transportation system. They started with a county sales tax increase, and it's not a penny or 2 pennies or 3 pennies. In many places, it's a half a cent. In some places, it's a quarter of a cent. Right now, 19 of the 58 counties in California are following this model. They're called self-help counties, and they're spending that money on projects that are improvement projects, both on the county road system, on the state highway system, in conjunction with Caltrans. And on public transit, and that's an important point. The Jarvis folks got outraged that because this all had to go to the voters for approval, they got outraged, so they said this is outrageous. They did an initiative, a referendum on a constitutional amendment in California that would require a 2/3 approval vote. They are getting the 2/3 on a regular basis throughout California for investments in transportation. It's not just general use of the money, it's a specific list of projects. It's to be done in a specific amount of time, and it is helping to keep the California transportation system not up, but moving along, and the kinds of investments are being made that need to be made. In New Jersey, New Jersey obviously is not California. There are some applications on this. But I think we need to have a constitutional amendment that would allow this. It's at the will of the voters in a particular county. It ought to allow counties to band together in an MPO, and it ought to be approved, I think, with some sort of supermajority, so that there's no question about a one-vote victory. It ought to be, it seems to me, 60%. I think I have great empathy for what Governor Corzine, what Chris Calori are going through, trying to keep a transportation system, as President McCormick pointed out, which is absolutely critical to the success of this state, going at a time when you can't get more money into the system. And I believe that this is one way. It's not a total solution to the problem. It is one way to address the issues, to put new money in for specific problems with the approval of the voters. There's buy-in. I think it's a good approach, and we ought to consider it. Thank you.
All right, we love the guys who have one thing, and we can vote on it real quickly. So we're going to call this the self-help counties concept. It's a constitutional amendment that would give us a special purpose transportation sales tax. Could be county, could be on an MPO basis, some 60% of the vote possibility in terms of it not being a one-vote kind of thing. You're in favor of this, it's a 5. You hate it, it's a 1. You're voting, and the survey says. They love it. All right.
Go. Thank you.
Next speaker on the list is the director of the Initiative for Regional and Community Transformation at the Blaustein School, Roland Englund.
Good afternoon. You know, every morning when I leave the house, I tell my wife my schedule. And today I said, well, you know, I'm going someplace and I'm going to be something that I never get to be when I'm home, and that's king for a day. So here are my suggestions, and take them with a grain of salt. First of all, I think in this state we need to finally build a solid community development, economic development infrastructure. Again, a community economic development infrastructure. We have danced around this for a number of years. We have nonprofits in the state that are operating on shoestring, and quite frankly, they do the hard work that the rest of society does not want to do. And we ought to value them, and we ought to fund them properly. My friend Pete Kasabek, I think, is still here. He did a yeoman's job when he was at HMFA, but I think we need to focus in and spend more resources to help these very important institutions, community development corporations in the state of New Jersey. Second, I think we need to value our schools in the inner cities. And I am all for charters, and I think we need to spend more time figuring out how to help the charters that we have become more efficient organizations and institutions. Too many go begging because of bad principles that are not as good as they should be, and we should have a way to make sure that we have a pipeline of good administrators. Third, I think we ought to value our community college system, because they, again, are part of the community economic development infrastructure. They provide workforce development training, they provide incubator services for small businesses, but we never focus in on those institutions as part of a solid community economic development system. Fourth, I think we ought to value our public sector and speak up for them. We have good and talented administrators, but we often denigrate them unnecessarily. And when we do that, we undercut the value of our public sector in the state of New Jersey. Lastly, I think we ought to define ourselves as a region. And if that means public relations, fine. But I think it's more than that. I think all of our institutions at a certain level have to figure out what this region really does, what it's good for, and work together to promote it. As I tell high school kids when I talk, you're not going to be competing with the kids in the next suburb. You're going to be competing with the kids in Westphalia, in Germany, and in India. And to prepare our kids for that, I think we need to define what we want to be as a region. Thank you.
All right. Stay here, Roland. All right. Interesting, provocative thoughts, hard to put into votes. But building a solid community economic development infrastructure, which I would say means put more money for nonprofits. I'd had it whispered in my ear. I wasn't smart enough to figure it out, but I did get sotto voce instruction. You're in favor of that. It's a 5. You're voting now. Survey says you're wildly in favor of that. Valuing inner city schools, helping particularly charter schools, charter public schools, as we're supposed to say, have better administrators. Probably also apple pie, but let's say more money. More money for support of charter public schools and particularly the administrators in them. You're voting. Survey says. Okay. More money for the community college system. More emphasis on the community college system. You're voting. Survey says. You like that. And I don't know, valuing the public sector. We won't vote on it. Defining ourselves as a region. I'm going to rephrase that. Forget about the political boundaries of New Jersey and figure out the boundaries that matter going forward. That's a little bit of a bastardization of what you said, but Roland says I can do that, okay? So 5-1. You're voting. Survey says. Wow. Okay, good. Thanks, Roland. Next speaker is the Executive Director of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. His name is Barry Seymour. Barry?
Thanks. Heard a lot of really well-considered and knowledgeable policy recommendations today, but most of them are really within the existing framework. So I took this assignment a little bit seriously and direct and thought about clean slate, brand new recommendations. My organization deals with both Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And so I get to see some of the advantages and disadvantages, different practices from the two states. So my out-of-the-box clean slate idea is a merger. Combine Pennsylvania and New Jersey, create Jersylvania. All right? Think about it, though. Jersylvania will be the third largest state in the country, okay, behind only California and Texas, bigger than New York, right? So now we'd be bigger than New York. Imagine the power in Congress, the power during elections. No one would ignore Jersylvania. This would be the place to be. But I think it's a win-win. Pennsylvania get access to the shore, they get the Delaware River, they get cheap gas and cheap liquor. But New Jersey gains. Pennsylvania has lower property taxes. They have a lower state income tax. Gambling revenue, they're crazy about gambling over there, so you can combine the two. And plus we get Ed Rendell and the Phillies. So I think it's a win-win idea. Seriously, my idea that I do want to put out and talk about is transportation funding. We have a real crisis in this state. We've allowed deficit financing to pay for our transportation. We're way behind in terms of investment. This is a state that runs on access. It runs on the ports. It runs on good movement, the ability to move people and goods throughout New Jersey. So with that density, we still have the third lowest gas tax in the country. So I think that there is an opportunity to raise the gas tax. I think that we should establish a long-term regular schedule for toll increases so that we don't have to go back every time and play out this drama on toll increases. I think that there's an opportunity to have more toll increases. In the long term, we're not going to see a lot more money coming from the federal government. The state is going to have to do what they can, and that means user fees. We have a lot of pass-through traffic and trucks, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for new tolls on existing highways. I support Jim Weinstein's idea of enabling local revenue for transportation, whether that's at a county, multi-county approach. We need to allow for mode flexibility so that when we raise transportation funds, depending on where we are in New Jersey, we can use them for transit, we can use them for freight, goods movement, or highways, depending on what's needed. And finally, I think that the state has not really used the leverage that it has through its transportation funding to drive development patterns. Growth and development decisions happen in large part because of the location and the form of our infrastructure. So if the state uses that leverage of providing funding for state investments, local municipalities have to do their part as well in terms of local zoning, local planning, concentration around transit stations and higher density. So I think it's an economic stimulus package for the state as a whole. It's a quality of life package, and it's a way to help move New Jersey forward. So thank you.
Hold on for a second. All right. Whether it's Jersylvania or Pencil Jersey, let's vote on it. Because it's a concept. I don't know that we have to take Ed Rendell along the way, but it's a concept. So if you're in favor of that kind of concept, which is definitely outside the box and clearly in keeping with the theme of today, you're voting.
No.
Survey says only if Biden is no. All right. So hey,
Oh.
that's actually fairly impressive. 2-1 for Pencil Jersey. I said Pencil Jersey. You said Jersylvania. All right. We run on access, so deficit financing of transit out. So we're looking for a long-term schedule for toll increases, user fees, things like that. But let's say long-term schedule for toll increases. Put it on the board. Be transparent. Be upfront. You're in favor of that? Survey says you are. Okay. And finally, leveraging transportation dollars to drive development. I don't know how to make that more specific. So I guess if conceptually that appeals to you, it's 5-1. So far, everything has appealed to you conceptually. I mean, but let's go for that. You're voting. Survey says. Wow. That's pretty interesting. Okay. Thanks, Bear.
Thank you.
Next speaker is the Executive Director of the South Jersey Tourism Corporation. You can figure out what he does from his title, but I refer you again to the bios of the people that you have in the materials that were prepared for you, which you picked up on the way in. This is John Sider. John.
Afternoon, everybody. I know that we need to get the sugar rush in, but good afternoon, everybody. Hello. You know, there's been some discussion and interesting talk about tourism up here. Just want to run some very quick numbers for you, and I'm lucky in this format I can talk very quickly. Statewide tourism for this year right now generates $37 billion in revenue, supplies over 500,000 jobs, ranks as the third largest industry in New Jersey behind pharmaceuticals and technology sector. Studies showing that right now, for every dollar that we spent on marketing tourism, promotion generates over $29 back into the state economy. Two questions that I'll raise to the audience today. First one will be the tourism question. What I'd like to do is, by the way, state of New Jersey right now, if we put it in perspective, Pennsylvania, Virginia, New York, Maryland, New Jersey spends less than any of those states in marketing itself as a tourism destination. We talk about tourism destination, we're speaking about not only bringing people from outside the state, but promoting ourselves from within. So for your approval or disapproval, I'd like to see about establishing a tax on transient rentals, places that people stay less than 28 days, using the same formula as currently established for hotels and motels in New Jersey. Funds from this program would generate an estimated $100 million in revenue that would do two things. One, balance of the funds would go directly to the Division of Travel and Tourism to market New Jersey as a destination, and two, would be used to eliminate beach fees in the state of New Jersey. That's the first question. Second question, New Jersey has a massive problem with its historic sites right now. We ain't got no money. Anybody that's familiar with the current budget situation is that the state DEP, Commissioner Lisa Jackson, has been given a mandate by Governor Corzine, a mandate and $8 million, and that's it, to do something to attempt to turn our state historic and national resources around. For your approval, New Jersey must create a new strategic plan to preserve and interpret historic sites and ensure that they make a significant contribution directly and indirectly to New Jersey's economy. 3 parts: adaptive reuse, restaurants, retail, lodging. As far as historical accuracy, we are talking about many of these structures actually serving the purposes for which they were actually designed. I used for your approval Indian King Tavern in Haddonfield, New Jersey. We have to reinterpret how our state sites how we interpret our state sites to visitors and make it more experiential and more entertaining. Third, and last, an aggressive, effective program for leasing and consignment contracts, ensuring the preservation of the site, income for the state, and a positive business environment for potential leases. Thank you, and I had 1 minute left.
All right. Stay here, John. We love people who can motor. First thing, a tax on transient rentals, that is rentals for fewer than 28 days. You're in favor of that?
Correct. Condominiums and homes.
Survey says. Okay. Next, the whole historic site question, the underfunding. So we would have a new state plan that would have adaptive reuse, that would have leasing and consignment of certain locations, reinterpretation, all those things that John mentioned. Probably the most specific of those would be the potential to lease or consign in terms of raising dollars. You're in favor of that? You're not. Survey says. All right, John, you got 2 winners. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have 2 more people in this segment, and then we will be on to the next segment. Our next speaker is the Freeholder Director of Camden County, New Jersey, but also the person responsible for bringing the New Jersey Motorsports Park to Cumberland County, Lou Magazoo.
Thank you. Greetings from Cumberland County. Spending all this money, agreeing to taxes, I feel like a state legislator for a minute. 3 items. 1, education and job training. Having greater alignment and availability, starting from kindergarten through college, taking advantage of our community college system and our job training system to ensure that there is alignment of all the systems and availability to all of our students. Second, economic connection with green initiatives. We had a seminar this morning in Cumberland. We had over 200 businesses come out because as the country and as the world is going green, we have the opportunity to go back to our manufacturing DNA as a state, which, remember, we still see the sign, Trenton makes and the world takes. We have the opportunity to go back to our manufacturing DNA and have a segue and a connection with the need for green initiatives, whether it's buildings, vehicles, whatever it might be. Third, consolidation of governments, and this may have been talked about earlier. There's just simply no reason to have all the municipalities, the school districts that we have, and without having a revolution or a war, we can begin doing it incrementally. Senator Sweeney, the majority leader, has a proposed bill having a countywide tax assessment. That's the beginning. Countywide tax assessment, countywide tax collection, ultimately, I believe, countywide courts to deal with minor municipal infractions, as well as prosecutors and municipal judges. There's simply no reason to have the repetition and redundancy that we have in New Jersey. We all know it. Frankly, I think now there's the opportunity because the voters know it. And I think the political will is there to engage in the dialogue and, frankly, some of the battles that may ensue. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Luke. We voted on green collar. We voted on consolidation. I'm going to guess that you're in favor of aligning job training with the community college mission, so we will move on from there. And the last speaker in this segment is from the St. Barnabas Healthcare System, Dr. Fred Jacobs.
Oh, thank you very much. I thought it was in the next segment, but because I was in a hurry, they really helped me out very much. For those of you who are here and heard Rich Miller, that was basically all I have to say. No, I mean, he really outlined a lot of these things very, very well. So rather than go through and repeat that, I just want to get to the point that I think is most important. First of all, I want you again to go to the website, the Department of Health website, and look at the Reinhardt Commission, the so-called Governor's Commission on Rationalizing Healthcare Resources, not just the report, the appendices, and all 6 subcommittee reports. There was a year's work put in on that, and there's an awful lot of information in that, and I think that's a very important thing. Hospitals, as you know, can't survive in New Jersey. They haven't been surviving. Many have closed, and over half of them are operating in the red right now. So without an adequate revenue stream, we're about to witness the withering and dying of our entire healthcare situation, which, of course, is something which is unacceptable, can't be done. And as if we didn't know that there's already a credit crisis throughout the world, the New York Times today, for those of you who've actually read that paper today, note that there's a large article about hospitals not being immune to the credit crunch, can't get credit, can't make payroll, can't do any of the capital expansions they want, and in fact many are applying for bankruptcy protection because of that. So this access issue is a huge thing. I know that Rich mentioned aligning incentives between hospitals and doctors, and there was some confusion about what that was. Hospitals are paid, and a lot of that money is at times withheld from them if the day in the hospital is deemed to be medically unnecessary. The doctors, on the other hand, are paid for every day the patient's there. That misalignment is what we're really all about. Doctors and hospitals need to be paid on the same system for the same necessity evaluation. Now, in fact, the state government has tried to do a lot with this. And as you all know, I did serve 3 years as commissioner, and was hamstrung a lot of times because of lack of funding at the state level. And I'm not blaming anybody for that. It's just the way it is. So while I can say that health care should be an urgent priority throughout the state and not just one more goal on a list of articulated goals, that's going to require money to do it. And it requires not only an evaluation of the hospital system, but ambulatory care, physician practices, etc. So here's my 5 suggestions and a way to pay for it. 1, we need to have a system of tort reform that uses the issues of evidence-based medical guidelines into it. I wish I could read that. We need enhanced better payment schedules, especially from government payers, which emphasize the concept of a medical home. Electronic information technology support in doctors' offices. That also improves quality, efficiency, and improves health outcomes. Expanded continuing medical education offerings, particularly by the University of Medicine and Dentistry, which is in a position throughout the state to do that. Now, we need to emphasize return to humanism in medicine, an issue that I've really been harping on, not just in medical school and residency, but also directed at the practicing doc. Here's how we pay for this. Now, I know that we had a 1/2 cent allocation from the income tax to pay for property tax relief. The property tax relief, and I don't want to knock that because for some people that's a very important thing. Health care is not an option. It's not an elective issue. I propose a 1/2 cent mandated, directed payment from the state income tax to fund improved quality health care throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. So I didn't get it when Rich said it, but now I get it. So doctors get paid the longer somebody's in the hospital. Hospitals get paid the quicker they get somebody out. So we want to align those. So we should pay doctors and hospitals to get people out quickly, or I guess to keep them in, if that's what we need to do. So you're voting on that. This is my epiphany. Survey says. Survey. Okay, we are wildly in favor of that. Now, the 1/2 cent income tax that would be dedicated to paying for the tort reform, the better pay, all the things that Fred talked about. So a dedicated revenue stream to fund the kinds of things that Fred talked about in terms of health care reform. You are in favor of that, 5-1. You're voting, survey says. You are more ambivalent about that than I would have expected. Thank you, Fred. Okay, we're moving to the next segment. The next segment is kicked off by one of the great tag teams in New Jersey. You remember Huntley Brinkley. You remember George Burns and Gracie Allen. You